I'm the history guy. I have a degree in history and I love history. And if you love history too, this is the channel for you. Philip Henry Gosse was a naturalist who helped to popularize the natural sciences. He's credited with coining the term aquarium and stocked the first public aquarium in the London Zoo in 1853. In 1860, he wrote a book called The Romance of Natural History, where he noted that many new mammal species had been discovered in the 19th century and speculated that more were yet to come. That speculation would inspire a famous explorer, artist, and colonial administrator, and in 1901, that inspiration would lead to one of the most extraordinary events of the 20th century. The discovery of a large mammal, some of which can be more than 700 pounds, previously unknown to science. It is a story of a mystery and one scientist's determination to solve that mystery that takes us to the deepest parts of darkest Africa to find one of the world's most unique species. It is a story that deserves to be remembered. Henry Hamilton Johnston was born in Kennington Park, South London, in 1858. It isn't clear exactly when Harry Johnston read Gosse's The Romance of Natural History, but was part of what spurred his interest in animals, especially Gosse's chapter on the unknown, where Gosse asks, "What may we not expect of the vast, the uncouth, the terrible of the creatures which may yet lurk, unsuspected, in the teeming wilds of Central Africa?" And Gosse then went on to make an astounding assertion. It is highly probable, Gosse speculated, that an animal of ancient renown, and one in which England has a peculiar interest, resides in the region just indicated. I refer to one of the supporters of Britain's shield, the famed unicorn. Gosse's justification for that wild speculation was that various European scientists had heard accounts of a horned, horse-like creature living in Central Africa. Gosse's description enthralled Johnston and inspired his imagination. As a young man, he developed an interest in natural history and a talent for art, and that led him down a unique career path, taking commissions from scientists to do drawings to illustrate their scientific books and papers. Johnston studied languages at King's College, and his passions led him to travel, where he often accompanied and later led expeditions using his artistic skills to capture the expedition's discoveries in an age when photography was rare. He developed a reputation as an explorer and as a scientist, but also concluded treaties and was a central figure in negotiating European spheres of influence on the African continent in the 19th century. In 1883, his travels allowed him to meet the famed explorer Henry Morton Stanley, the explorer who had famously tracked down the missing Dr. David Livingstone in 1871. Stanley would later play a role in Johnston's most famous discovery. In 1888, Stanley published a book called In Darkest Africa. The book was Stanley's account of the disastrous mission to relieve Emin Pasha that is the topic of another episode of 5 Minutes of History. In the book, Stanley makes an account of African pygmies, a reference to a diminutive peoples of Central Africa, from tribes such as the Aka, Efe, and Mabuti, where adult men are on average less than 150 centimeters, or 4 foot 11 inches tall. While Stanley was not, in fact, the first European to encounter the pygmy peoples, he noted something unique in a footnote to his book. The pygmies that he encountered mentioned an otherwise unknown sort of African donkey or zebra that lived in the dense forests of Central Africa, that they called the Ati. As there would be no grassland there on which a horse could forage, Stanley speculated that the animal must survive by foraging on leaves. This account confounded Johnston. Wild horses of all types lived on the plains, and none fed upon leaves. Could these be the unicorns to which Gosse had alluded in 1860? Johnston wrote in a magazine article that he determined to make further inquiries on the subject whenever fate should lead me in the direction of the great Congo forest. Fate would lead him there in 1899, when Johnston was sent to the British Protectorate of Uganda to negotiate an end to ongoing conflict with local chiefs. It was there that Harry Johnston would make his first encounter with the pygmy peoples. A German, across the border in the Belgian Congo, had kidnapped some pygmies. apparently intent upon taking them to Europe to exhibit them. He had been chased by Belgian authorities, but had escaped into British Uganda. The Belgian authorities appealed to Johnston, who had the man arrested. The German was tried and required to pay a fine. The pygmies were released into Harry Johnston's custody. Johnston promised to return the kidnapped natives, members of the Wambuti tribe, back to their own lands. But while they were with him, he took the opportunity to talk to them about the ati that Livingstone had mentioned. To Johnston's joy, the Wambuti were familiar with the animal, which they described as being striped like a zebra, but having a solid brown upper body. And, most surprisingly, they said that the animal had more than one hoof. That was telling to Johnston, because if the animal indeed had cloven hooves, it could not be a horse, since all modern horses' hooves are a single piece. Could it be, he thought, a remnant of ancient horses, long thought to be extinct, who had toes on their feet? That would be an amazing discovery indeed. On the expedition to return the natives to their homes, Johnston met some Belgian officers who told him that some of their native troops had recently killed an ati. Johnston was able to procure from them 2 bandoliers, straps that are used to carry ammunition, that had been made from the animal's skin. They were indeed striped like a zebra, but little more could be determined from these small strips of hide. On the way, the Wambuti pointed out tracks, and Johnston was surprised to find that they were neither the tracks of a single-hoofed horse nor of a toed horse ancestor, but the cloven hooves of an antelope. He thought that the tracks must be from something else, one of many forest antelope. That was, though, as close as he got. After returning the Wambuti to their homes, the expedition was struck by malaria and had to return to Uganda. But the Belgian officers remembered his interest. The next time their native soldiers killed one of the animals, they sent the skin and skull to Johnston. And from those, Johnston concluded that the find was even more astounding than he imagined. The animal was neither a horse nor a unicorn. It was, rather obviously, a type of giraffe. The animal species that he discovered, officially recognized in 1901 as Okapi johnstoni, was the okapi, a forest-living relative of the giraffe. That was an amazing discovery, as the giraffe was thought to be the last surviving member of the Giraffidae family, and no other species of that family had been thought to exist since the Miocene epoch, which ended more than 5 million years ago. The okapi has been described as one of the most unique large mammals on Earth, and it was the last major mammal to be discovered on the continent of Africa. It is related to the giraffe, but the relationship is very distant, with a 2016 study determining that the closest common ancestor between the two goes back more than 11.5 million years. The okapi is sometimes included among the small class of creatures that are called living fossils, because its closest relative exists only in the fossil record, and it is very similar to Samotherium, a giraffid that is only known to have lived during the Miocene epoch. A shy and solitary creature, it is by some accounts the 9th rarest creature on Earth, with less than 20,000 thought to exist in the wild. Its solitary nature, well-developed camouflage, and range in some of the most remote and inaccessible parts of the Earth kept it from the eyes of science clear until the 20th century. Today, the okapi is threatened by habitat destruction and poaching. While it is protected by law, its range in the Ituri Forest of the Democratic Republic of the Congo is an area of political instability and violence. In 2012, poachers, upset that rangers of the Okapi Wildlife Reserve were preventing them poaching elephants, took over the headquarters of the reserve, murdered 6 guards and civilians, and slaughtered 13 okapi that were kept there as part of a breeding program. But the okapi does do well in captivity, and while still rare, can be seen in many zoos around the world, where they maintain a reserve population to keep the species from going extinct. Sir Harry Johnston wrote more than a dozen books about his adventures as an explorer, artist, and colonial administrator in Africa. And while he displayed many of the paternalistic attitudes of Europeans towards native Africans of his time, he was one of few colonial administrators who argued that colonial administrations should get to know the culture of the subjugated peoples, and was one of the first colonial administrators to employ native Africans in colonial service as clerks and skilled staff. He passed away in 1927 with perhaps his most memorable accomplishment being the extraordinary creature that bears his name, the unicorn that he had sought since childhood, the rare and beautiful Okapi Johnstoni. I'm the History Guy, and I hope you enjoyed this edition of my series, 5 Minutes of History, short snippets of forgotten history, 5 to 10 minutes long. And if you did enjoy, please go ahead and click that thumbs up button that is there on your left. If you have any questions or comments or would like to suggest other topics for the History Guy, feel free to write those in the comment section and I will be happy to respond. And if you'd like 5 minutes more forgotten history, all you need to do is subscribe.